Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Institute for Personal Development, where total consciousness is the new frontier. Kriya Yoga is the union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices that initiate this process.
Good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's talk consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of the Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing pretty good today. How about you?
I'm doing great on this Monday morning here in Hampton. I do believe we're going to have a rainy day today, but that's all right. I guess we all need some of that. And I want to thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Today on The Voice of Yoga, we will talk about the new moon in the zodiacal sign of Leo on August 2nd, 2016 at 4:44 p.m. We'll discuss the potential of the new moon for a new beginning to lift yourself out of any rut or unlived habit. Listen to learn how to use this astrological event to help shape your reality. Swami will explain how Saturn and the moon are the principles of manifestation and to get behind the trine of the moon to Saturn to move forward. So welcome to the Voice of Yoga. We are talking consciousness. So Swami, I guess we should just begin and explain maybe to some of the listeners out there that may not even understand what the new moon is all about, not just astrologically, but how does that relate to Kriya Yoga?
Yeah, the whole thing of astrology and using astrology in conjunction with a metaphysical or a mystical system, I found to be quite helpful. It just gives you additional information. It's kind of like if you were going to a foreign country or you're going to a new location. It would be nice to know the climate, the topography, if you were going to the beach, if you were going to the desert, if you were in the jungle, if it was a big city, or just that type of information can be really helpful for you to prepare yourself for your environment. And the same is true, I think, astrologically, that when after a while you start to look at a chart, and it kind of gives you the layout of this biosphere of energy. It kind of tells a story of what it is that we can expect, that certain planets in certain positions give off a certain energy, and how they interact with each other kind of sets the tone for the biosphere of energy that will be available to us at a given time. And if you have a metaphysical or a mystical system, you're basically constantly trying to shape your inner state to fit the demands of the outside world. You're constantly trying to attune yourself to being able to move through life with the least amount of conflict and resistance and interference. So it kind of assists you with being able to harmonize with your environment. And if you know, say, for example, what that biosphere of energy is and how to navigate around it, I think it just makes it more enjoyable.
So we can basically look at what's going on celestially, kind of like as a blueprint of the day, of the week, or whatever. And you said for us to attune to that kind of energy. And I'm glad you said that, because I actually was thinking of using that phrase in my next question to ask you, which is, how does one start to attune themselves to that energy? Because, some people have more of a they're more susceptible to feeling those kind of subtle sources of energy, and some don't. So how does one go about trying to tune into that, so to speak? Is it through knowledge? Is it through experience? How do they attune themselves to that?
Well, part of that is an adjustment of going from approaching your life from a more unconscious, reactive level of consciousness to a conscious level of response, where you are, one of the things that we always talk about is you're being more intelligent about it, that you're using your mental functions on a regular basis. And so when you are intelligent, you are more perceptive. So you're actually taking in data from your external world, and then you're organizing it, you're systemizing it. And when you get accustomed to looking at a chart and it tells you a story, then it can give you some insight. And after a while, you learn to become more sensitive to it. You become more experienced with it. And it's like anything else. I don't know, I equate it to trading. You know, it's you have to learn the markets. You look at charts of different stocks, and it gives you insight into something that will help you make a decision about what this is going to do in the future. And the same is true with the astrology. Mm-hmm. Only the nice thing about the astrology is we know where the planets are going to be. Like the stock market, what you look at is just now. We don't know what's going to happen 2 minutes from now. Whereas with the astrology, we know where the planets are going to be. And so it eliminates that element of surprise. It helps you anticipate. And also, like I say, attune yourself, because what happened the last time we had a new moon in Leo could give you some clues into things that might be similar to this particular transit.
Well, that makes perfect sense when you explain it like that. That everything has even the planets have a procedure, and then we can have an intention to work with that kind of a procedure. So let's get right to it. Let's talk about the new moon in Leo, and what does Leo represent, and how should we try to best take advantage of the new moon?
Yeah, well, Leo, on a very simplistic level, it's going to represent your fifth house, basically. It's the house of play, fun. It's the house of speculation, children, and it's gonna have things to do with your cardiovascular system and the attribute of being loyal. What?
Tony's dad.
Oh yeah, Tony's dad. Yeah, right. Yeah, to have that procedure the day before a new moon is probably auspicious, favorable, and like we said, you have the benefit of the trine to Saturn in this particular configuration, and the Sun, the Moon, and Saturn are in favorable aspect, that being able to manifest things, and that's one of the things that we talk about, that the Sun, the Moon, even the whole concept of Hatha Yoga means Sun-Moon union. And what's significant about that is that when you understand the relationship between the planets and your chakras, that the path of the Moon to Saturn is really Pingala Nadi. I'm sorry, it's Ida Nadi. It is the path of descending prana. And it has everything to do with the physical world. And the physical world, one of the things that is very important to understand about it is that it's dualistic. That in order for something to manifest, it splits off from the unified state. It manifests in half and then leaves behind this complementary unmanifested other part. So there's kind of like the quantum physics of particles and waves. And the whole thing of that the electron is both a particle and a wave. But it is a particle when it's being observed. That observation has effect on reality. And that's one of the things that we were talking about, that the metaphysical system really cultivates the conscious mind so that you are much more accustomed to using your mind and your thoughts to help generate reality, help create your experiences. And when you have a new moon, which is a new beginning, to me, I always look for the benefit of a fresh start. And living new moon to full moon, you've got this kind of cycle that you can work with that's moving relatively quickly. It's about 12 to 13, 14 days. So it's moving relatively quickly, in relation to our lives. But life is going to become the compilation of cycles within cycles. That whatever we begin here, for every action there will be an equal and an opposite reaction that will help put things into motion for us. And the more conscious participation that you have, then the more control we have.
So you were talking earlier when you were discussing, the role that the planets, can have, and what made me think about what you used to say is that not to be reactive, and not to be emotional and reactive, but to be intelligent. So we can use the formation of the planets daily, and especially right now, like you say, as a new beginning, to be intelligent about maybe some of the decisions that we want to make, like what are we desiring, and how do we go about handling certain situations. So, and not to be reactive, but like I said, but to be more intelligent.
Oh, absolutely. And this particular chart that this new moon has, some of the things that you want to focus on is that in Hampton, the new moon is going to have Sagittarius rising, and Jupiter is going to be in the 9th house, which is a relatively strong Jupiter, and it's all about the higher mind. And it is also, in this particular chart, Neptune is in the 3rd house, which is the part of the lower mind. And the benefit that comes with that is where the conscious mind gets to touch the higher and the lower minds are kind of in sync, and you can kind of see how they can start to work together. Mm-hmm. Because as we go from being instinctual to intelligent to what we call wise, that we're actually expanding the conscious mind. We're actually we're going from parts of the mind that can do only one thing at a time to parts of the mind that can do many things at once, to the part of the mind that can do that is doing everything at once. And so developing your psychological organs becomes a platform for this process. And again, Saturn being in the 12th house in this particular chart, the whole thing of being able to understand that this process and development has procedure. That it's not something that you just wish you had, or something that if you just say you're doing, that there's a lot more to it. There's physics involved. And the physics of spirituality, I think during this here particular transit, can become a little bit clearer to somebody who is more attuned to the concept. With Pluto in the first house, the new moon taking place in the 8th house, which is the house of transformation, the house of death and rebirth, that particular cycle of how things actually transform and not just change. That's an important thing to understand, that things change and things transform, and they're different things. There's a difference between a mechanical change and a chemical change. And the whole thing of transformation of a human being is a chemical change. It's not just going from secretary to lawyer, that it is basically going from unconscious awareness to self-conscious awareness, and then hopefully eventually to superconscious awareness. But to have an understanding that this isn't just something that's going to happen to you, it's something that we have to make happen.
All right, that is wonderful information. We're going to get back to that, but let's hold that thought and pause to hear a word from our sponsor. So, listeners, we'll be back in a few moments.
If you are looking for a Samadhi-based experience, IPD Kriya Yoga has the goods. A complete yoga program that includes the practices and the process. Kriya Yoga Series 1 live classes and videos. Get your arms around the spiritual science of Kriya Yoga.
You know, the intention of why we practice is to embody spirit, to feel connected to the life force.
Kriya Yoga Asana live classes and videos. A cosmically engineered system of exercises to initiate apotheosis. A system of exercises engineered for dining and dancing at the cosmic ballroom. Kriya Yoga Series 2 live classes and videos. A practice in open forum designed to facilitate positive growth of consciousness. Get your Labyrinth video.
I find the positive side of this is it pulls a lot of things together.
Kriya Yoga Mantra and Meditation. With repetition comes absorption. Pray on prana and become divine.
At the same time, we all have a unique talent and gift to give back to the universe.
Private sessions. The mysteries of the universe have always been handed down verbally from teacher to student. Call or click now and get started. 603-929-0303 or www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste.
Welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you are listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. So, Swami, we're talking about this new moon in Leo. Let's talk about what does loyalty require when we talk about Leo and loyalty.
Well, basically, the highest octave of loyalty would be a virtue. And again, one of the things that most of us try and do is we try and be virtuous without this concept of God's help, which makes it a Herculean task. So the whole thing of the understanding that the life force, this connection to this different resource, this different source of sustenance, the quantum field, this indivisible unified state, the absolute, brings a different return. It produces a different entity. And so virtue is one of the things, the benefits that come with this connection. And of course, Leo rules the cardiovascular system. So loyalty is a virtue that comes from the heart. And the heart basically is your body's feeling state. And when we feel connected to the life force, then of course this concept of virtue brings with it an ability to overcome fears. And that's a big part, I think, of this concept of loyalty, that a lot of people sometimes jump ship simply because they're afraid. They're either afraid that they're not good enough, or that they're still looking for other people's approval in their decision making. But the benefit that comes with this internal support, that virtue brings with it the ability to overcome fear. And then, of course, it expands out that it also brings wisdom to overcome ignorance. It brings purpose, an expanded sense of self, a sense of connectedness to a greater whole, to overcome selfishness. And of course, the final thing is it brings what's called enthusiasm, to overcome laziness. And to work with this particular transit to start your personal development, to take responsibility, tomorrow would be a really good time to initiate that.
I believe that maybe there could be, lots of people out there that may not even realize that they are in a state, if you will, a state of fear. I think a lot of people think of fear as being, fear of the dark, fear of flying, whatever, those type of external fears. But there are actually fears in our bodies that we may not even be attuned to. And so maybe using intelligence and using maybe even manifestation, maybe that can help some people become aware of what's actually going on. Maybe they have this fear of success, or a fear of a giving relationship, whatever it might be. So how can somebody use what's going on right now to help them have this sense of that kind of awareness?
Yeah, it's hard sometimes to know what it is that we don't know. And was it with Mark Twain or Josh Billings said something to the effect, it's not the things that we don't know, it's all the things we think we know that just ain't so. And the simple fact that we live our lives in fear, we're controlled by fear, we're driven by fear, simply marks the simple fact that we've never separated from a resource of energy that produces fear. That's the like attracts like. That's trying to understand the principle of manifestation. That particles have their place, but they're dualistic. They're in half. You cannot be a whole person if you continue to draw from a resource of energy that is dualistic. And so this separation from one source of sustenance and rejoining with another this yoga with the divine, is oftentimes the thing that's missing in the equation. And then, of course, we try and uphold the conduct without the connection, but we find ourselves underpowered oftentimes and ill-equipped to be able to move beyond the limitations of these fears. And there's an old saying, you stand in fear and you stand to lose. So the intention really of the yoga practice is to really be able to separate from your attachment to duality and join with this indivisible unified field as a source of sustenance. With that connection comes the benefit of internal support. Now your exchange of energy is different with your outside world. You're not drawing off of it, you're actually giving back to it.
Now, is it going to make a difference what I manifest for in relationship to the fact that using Saturn, as a launching pad for that, like we always talk about, particles and waves. So if I want to manifest particles and waves, is that going to be something that the Saturn's going to be able to assist with, or does it have to be? Do I have to choose other things that's not in the physical world?
Well, to answer your question, it's the interplay between matter and mind. In order for you to manifest something, you want to be able to visualize, which is the wave part of the equation. And then when you can visualize a particular intention, then the next thing that has to happen is you want to emit that thought with belief, because belief is what gives thought the power of intention. And so your connection to the life force is really what gives you this belief. And the more you go to that resource for your sense of well-being, then the more loyalty you have to it, the more accustomed you are, because nothing gives you a better result than to be relatively consistent with your ability to manifest things on a regular basis. And so if you are using the equation properly, then you get better results. But you want to use your connection to spirit to give you that sense of confidence. Then you want to use your mind, emit the thought, and then, of course, to emit that thought and then wait and see what materializes. If that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it does. But it's almost that time we're going to start closing down our program again. So I would like to invite your listeners out there to visit our website. You can follow Swami on Pinterest and Twitter and, of course, on Facebook. Be sure to visit the website, www.ipdswam.com. Once there, you can post comments about this show or any ideas for shows you may want us to consider. And keep those comments, questions, and curiosities coming, because Swami does enjoy hearing from you. And be sure to tune in next week. We're going to talk about a day in the life of a yogi. So that should be really fun. You can email me at lisa@ipdtransform.com with questions that you would like Swami to answer. So, Swami, any final thoughts or comments about today's show?
Well, I would like to encourage people to take advantage of this new moon, this new beginning, and maybe put something into motion for yourself. Have a clear vision. Use positive imagery. And feel connected. Start using what you need, that you're okay. And with that, I'll wish everybody a good day. Namaste.
And thank you for listening to our program, The Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton along with Swami Jayananda signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.